In this video, we're going to implement batch processing essentially to minimize the amount of interactions with our database to improve performance. So as you can see here, I have an existing Java Hibernate application in which Hibernate is already configured. So I have my Hibernate CFG XML file or Hibernate configuration file open here, and you can see that I've all my connection properties already in place. And I also have a property here, show SQL, which ultimately tells Hibernate to display the SQL that it generates in our console. And I have an additional property here, Hibernate JDBC batch size, which ultimately tells Hibernate to flush a finite amount of statements to our database to improve performance. So in this case, I have my batch size set to 30. So anytime I have 30 persistable objects saved to the session and then I call flush, those 30 will get essentially persisted. So the first thing that we want to start off by doing here is creating a class that will start the application. So I'm going to right click on source, I'm going to click new, and then I'm going to click Java, and I'm going to call this class main. And inside this class, of course, I'm going to declare a public static void main method, string args. Okay, so now that we have that in place, what we want to start off by doing is opening a connection to our database, and I can achieve that by leveraging this Hibernate util class that I have in place here. So as you can see, this Hibernate util has an instance of session factory which will get initialized as soon as I call this util class, and then we can sort of leverage it to open connections to our database. So if I go back to my main method here, we're going to implement this. So I'm going to start off by opening a connection. So session equals session equals Hibernate util dot get session factory dot open session. So now that we have a connection to our database, we are going to declare a transaction which we'll use to essentially commit data. So transaction, we'll just call this tx equals null. And now we're going to create a try catch finally block. So anytime we interact with the database, we likely want to wrap this in a try catch finally block so that we can essentially commit the transaction if everything goes well, or roll the transaction back in the event of an exception. And then lastly, which would be in the finale block, we would close the session or close the connection so that it gets released to the connection pool. So the first thing we want to do here is start the transaction. So transaction equals session begin transaction. Oh, sorry. TX. And now I'm going to create a for loop in order to insert 100 records into our person table. So var int I equals 0, I less than 100, and we're going to increment I, of course. All right, so now in our for loop, we're going to save an instance of person. So session.save new person, and I'm going to pass in the primary key here because I don't have the sequence set up in my Oracle database, but typically you would not pass the primary key to your save operation because it would actually be generated from the database. So we're going to pass in I, and I'm going to pass the first name, and I'm simply going to append I so that we can sort of distinguish these records in our database, and I'm going to pass in the last name, and again I'm going to append I. Okay, so now that we've essentially saved a new instance of person to our session, we want to essentially check how many persistable objects are in the session at a given time. So we can use this by, or we can achieve this by having an if condition inside our loop here, and we're going to use the modulus operator to tell us whether we've reached an interval of 30. So I modulus 30 equals 0. And inside this if block here is where we're actually going to flush the data to our database. So we can do that by doing session.flush. And then we're going to call session.clear to remove those objects from the session so that our application does not crash due to an out-of-memory error. So session.clear. And lastly, in the try block, we're going to call transaction or tx.commit to actually persist that data. Okay, so now that the try block is complete, I'm going to implement the catch here. So we're going to catch the Hibernate exception. And in the event of an exception, what we want to do is roll back the transaction. So tx.rollback. And our finale block here is going to take care of closing the connection and releasing it to the connection pool by calling session.close. And we're simply going to wrap up by exiting the program so that we can restart it without manually stopping it at each time. So here we've got that going here. Now if I show you the person table right now, it's got no data in it. But if I were to run this application, and I'm actually going to set a breakpoint inside this if block here to show you that the inserts will get executed in batches of 30. So if I were to start the application here, alright, so you see that we've entered the if block, and if I essentially step over this, you'll see that my inserts essentially got sent to the database. And if I do that again, I've got another batch of 30, and again another, and then I've essentially committed all my information to the database, and my application is stopped and there were no exceptions. Now if I look at my person table, I now have 100 records. And that's essentially all you need to do to implement batch processing in your Hibernate application.